This 17-year-old girl is under arrest in connection to a murder, but she's not the one who police say pulled the trigger. Police say she's the one who put a plan into motion that led to the death of this fellow teenager. And the alleged gunman, now in Jailhouse Orange, had quite the way with words on his social media. And he also tried to plead his case in court before the judge told him to stop. This is per WBTW.
I did not do none of this.
And what makes this story even more tragic is that apparently the alleged shooter and victim knew each other. And what took one life and potentially put another in prison for life, according to police, was all over a girl. And you will not believe the clues that social media may have left behind. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Today we're talking about a story that is all the talk of small town South Carolina, and there's a lot of talk about it on social media, and I'll get into that in just a second. Two teens are under arrest. They are accused in the murder of a third. This is Devan Raper. He's the man who police say pulled the trigger on June 24th. And according to police, this shooting happened in Johnsonville, South Carolina, along this country road around 11:30 p.m. On that road, when police responded, officers found 16-year-old Trey Wright on the ground. He had multiple gunshot wounds. He was taken to a hospital where he died. Police say there is video of the altercation that took place that has not been released to the public as of yet. Trey was a high school athlete who loved the outdoors and living life to the fullest, according to his obituary. His high school posted this message saying that they were mourning the loss of one of their own. It didn't take long for police to find the person they say pulled the trigger and killed Trey Wright. Here he is, Devan Raper. He was arrested the next day. We found this picture of him on social media posted by someone who said they were close to Trey Wright. Then on June 30th, another arrest. The person who police say facilitated Trey's murder, here she is, 17-year-old Gianna Kistenmacher. She's facing a charge of accessory before the fact. It is shocking that a teenager would do what police say she did, and I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But before we get into that connection, we have to talk about the connection that the alleged shooter had with the victim. We know that Trey and Devan Raper knew each other to at least some extent because we saw that they follow each other on TikTok. But these two apparently were not friends. The local sheriff told WBTW TV that Raper and Wright were at odds all over a girl. Both talked about girls a lot on social media, but hey, that is what teens do. This is Trey's final post on TikTok. It was just a couple days before his murder. It is a video of him with someone else. They're dancing on a dark road saying, quote, "I'm just a girl. No, you're the reason I wake up and smile every day." Raper also talked a lot about girls on his social media. This is a pic of him flipping the bird at the camera with the caption, quote, "I wish we never met. I wish you would have stopped giving me missed signals, but can you stop because I'm trying to get to know your friend right now." There's no proof at this point that the girl drama that police say led to the death of Trey Wright is related to those specific posts on TikTok, but it just gives you an idea of the conversations that they were having online. But let's talk about the 17-year-old girl who has been arrested, accused of facilitating all of this and causing so much pain and heartache for the family of Trey Wright. According to police, Kistenmacher, here's her mugshot once again, knew all the details of the boys being rivals about a female. Police say she drove Devan Raper to meet Trey Wright on the night of the murder, quote, knowing that Raper was armed and that there would be a confrontation for violence likely to lead to the death based on statements made in her presence. She is now in jail. Her bond has been denied according to local media reports. As for Devan Raper, here is video from WBTW of his first court appearance. He was denied bond, but he actually tried to speak up in court and talk to the judge and explain his case.
I did not do none of this. There was 4 more people.
All right, I'm not here to try.
I understand that.
I'm not here to try your case, but you can speak to law enforcement and you can also talk to your attorney.
Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I need to take a break and talk about our partners at Thrive Market. It's an issue that so many people have. When you go to the grocery store, how do you find food that is not just affordable, but it's also healthy? Sometimes the two of them don't mix, but that's where Thrive Market comes in. We're talking about an online grocery store. It is truly a go-to where you can shop healthy and sustainable products, and they are delivered right to your door. And one of the best parts about Thrive Market is it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you if you're looking to get rid of questionable ingredients, because Thrive actually restricts more than 1,000 questionable ingredients from the products they carry that you will see on their website. I love these sweet potato chips. These are great for the middle of the day. It's good if you're keto or on some sort of special diet. These are one of the products that I really enjoy, but they have a ton of stuff to offer, especially if you're looking for something to not just solve the midday cravings and have good taste, but also at the same time be something that's a little bit healthier than your typical potato chip. With Thrive Market, you can shop everything from pantry staples to snacks to personal care items, all from your home. Plus, they have a commitment to sustainability, meaning not only do you take care of yourself, but you also take care of the planet. And they have an easy to use website and app. That way you can filter by your dietary preferences, whether you're keto, like I was talking about, gluten-free, vegan, or maybe you're just trying to make healthier choices. Thrive Market has something for everyone. So if you're ready to make healthy food shopping as easy as just a few clicks, give Thrive Market a try. You can scan the QR code on your screen, or there's a link below that you can click. You can also head over to thrivemarket.com/onthecase. You will get 30% off your first order and a free gift when you join Thrive Market. Trust me, you won't regret it. This isn't the only criminal case that Devan Raper has ever dealt with. In fact, in August of last year, he was arrested on a charge of being accessory after the fact to a felony or murder. He was released from jail in November, and then those charges were dismissed in February, according to WBTW. Joining us now is criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Matt Mangino. Matt, thank you for taking the time, as always, to be with us on Law and Crime. This is a sad case, especially with the loss of Trey Wright, who was a teenager, and then you have these two other teenagers who have been charged in connection to his death. And Gianna Kistenmacher is the 16-year-old girl who has been arrested as an accessory to this shooting. And police believe that she knew that Devan Raper, who's the person who's accused of pulling the trigger, and Trey Wright, who's the victim, that she knew that they were having issues, that Devan Raper allegedly wanted to hurt or kill Trey Wright, and that she brought Devan Raper to this place where they ended up having an altercation. What does the law say about her role in all of this and why it's criminal?
Well, number one, according to the news reports, she knew that her co-defendant in this case had a gun, and she knew that there was going to be a confrontation, and she brought him there knowing that. And so under South Carolina law, she's an accessory before the fact, which means she knew what was going to happen. She knew that there was possibly going to be a crime of violence with a weapon, and she still brought the defendant or her co-defendant to the place where this crime ultimately occurred.
And just from the press release that we have from the Florence County, South Carolina Sheriff's Office, they say that she knew that Devan Raper was allegedly going to attack or kill Trey Wright because of statements that were made in her presence. Having been a former prosecutor, when you're building this case, what type of evidence do you need to prove that Gianna Kistenmacher played the role that you're alleging that she did?
Well, initially, you need to find out who may have been in their presence when these threatening statements were made. Was there anybody else there who knew that Raper had a gun and that there was this overall threat of violence to be perpetrated once he was delivered to Wright's presence wherever they were going to meet? Is there any talk about this on social media? Was there any exchange of texts or other electronic communication where it was made clear that this was what Raper's intent was, and that he had the ability to carry out what he had threatened? So those are the kind of things that you want to build a case with. We know that Gianna was there. We know that Raper was there, and ultimately we know that Wright was there. He's deceased. Was there anybody else present, either before or after this ride over to the crime scene? And that's what police are probably investigating right now.
And Devan Raper made his first court appearance. He is accused of murder. He's 19 years old, so obviously an adult. He spoke out during his first court appearance. I want to get your thoughts on that, because we don't often see it, but we do from time to time, where a defendant tries to plead the case to the judge, like that's going to make a difference in how this is prosecuted. But what he said when he was speaking out to the judge was something along the lines that there were other people there, that I didn't do this, that there were other people in the car on their way to meet the victim, Trey Wright. How does that factor into how you prosecute this case, knowing that there were other people around? And his defense may be that he'll say to the prosecutors that you don't have proof that I was the one who had the gun.
Well, yeah, number one, I have had an opportunity to read some of the media coverage of this, and in fact saw an interview with the sheriff in which the sheriff in that jurisdiction specifically says that there's video, and we know from case after case that there's not much that doesn't happen any longer that's not on either somebody's phone or on some sort of electronic device that is either a safety camera or police camera, wherever it might be. So the sheriff saying that there was video of this incident and that was part of his investigation would either substantiate or not substantiate what Raper's saying. If there are other people present, what were the other people's role? And if there is videotape, what does that tape show? It's easy to say, hey, there was other people there, somebody else is responsible. But if the police and investigators already have videotape that shows something different, that's certainly not a good idea. And listen, it's never a good idea to speak up at your preliminary arraignment or your bond hearing. There's nothing that talking about the facts of the case can do, at that level. I mean, basically all that's happening is the judge is telling you what the charges are against you, telling you you have the right to have an attorney, and telling you this is what your bond is going to be. Now, there's some things you can talk about with regard to your background and other things that might be important for bond, but that's not talking about the case is not one of them.
He didn't seem to say, and you definitely know better than I would, but it was something, hey, there were more people there. So you're kind of getting an idea of what his defense might be. But I mean, is that something as a prosecutor that you hear him say that and you're like, okay, that's the direction they're going to go?
Mm-hmm.
How can you use even a small snippet like what we heard against a defendant, like in this case, where he's kind of given up the game plan of what his defense might be?
Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. So first of all, if you have video, what does that video show? And number one, if it shows that there were other people, that there were not other people there, that it was just the defendant, his co-defendant Gianna, and the victim, well, yeah, you can use that statement. Hey, he's lying. He's making up a story. He's saying something that isn't true right from the get-go. He's trying to get around these charges by lying about them. Now, if there are other people there, what does it show? So yeah, there were other people there, but that may not change the circumstances if it clearly shows that in fact, he was the shooter in this case. Could it be a self-defense, that he was attacked by the victim and he had to use lethal force to stop him? That's another thing. But I don't think he, at least according to what you've told me, that he said that at the preliminary arraignment. So there's a lot of different directions. And listen, anything that you say, even your manifestations, the way you react to questions that are asked of you, can be used against you in the future. So, the number one rule I have with a client is don't speak to anybody about this case but me. Once I'm retained, don't talk to anybody. And that would be certainly something I would tell my client before we walked into a preliminary arraignment. Hey, there's nothing that you can say that's going to make a difference other than the fact that you're not going to flee and you have family ties and you have a job or something like that.
Because I just imagine whoever his defense attorney is, maybe it's a public defender, like you just see that moment playing out in front of you. I mean, have you ever had that as a defense attorney where, I mean, I get the emotions, I get the stress of a defendant being accused of something. Just to sit there and just to see him start talking to the judge, I can't imagine what the emotion would be for an attorney that then has to deal with that.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting situation that I was involved in as a prosecutor. And in our community where I was a prosecutor, we had Amish families, and there was an
Mm.
Amish community. And the Amish, if they do something wrong, they want to come in and tell the truth and take whatever punishment might be uh, coming their way. And we had a trial call where all defendants show up, and here an Amish man showed up, and the judge said, "Sir, what can I do for you?" And he started confessing to the crime that he committed in his community, and everybody was shocked. And the judge is so slow, stop, stop, stop. But so yeah, there are situations where people will come into court and just start talking, and again, it's never a good idea.
And I know this is kind of like a sidebar to the story that we're talking about, but on that note, because I have seen in those cases when a defendant may speak up and they start talking to a judge and then the judge stops them from talking, why does the judge stop a defendant in that moment if they are saying something related to the case?
Well, the judge wants to make sure that they understand what their rights are. Okay, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right not to be a witness against yourself, and the judge wants to ensure before someone's going to make a confession on the record in a courtroom that they understand that they have no obligation to do that. The mere fact that they're charged means that the state has to prove them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They don't have to prove anything. And judges want to be very cautious about that type of raw confession in the middle of a courtroom.
Yeah, because even in this case, you could tell that, since the judge, the second that Devan Raper started talking, the judge was pretty much saying, like, keep it, talk to your, talk to your counsel, talk to your counsel.
Right.
Let's go back to Gianna Kistenmacher here. She's 16 years old. Is that a state to state issue of whether or not she would be charged as an adult in something like this?
Well, as I understand South Carolina's Juvenile Act, anybody who commits a crime under the age of 18 would be subject to the juvenile court. There are exceptions to that. Certain specific felonies that could result in punishment beyond 5 years, and then another set of felonies that could be punishable by over 15 years. Uh, a juvenile can be charged as an adult. And when you look at the statute here, an accessory before the fact, um, it's punishable by whatever felony was committed. And in this case, there's a charge of first degree murder, which could be punishable by up to life in prison and possibly even the death penalty applied in a situation like this. But obviously, this is the most serious offense that an individual could commit, and to be an accessory before the fact makes it just as serious.
How common do you see that charge come down in murder cases like this?
Well, it's unusual, but in Pennsylvania, for instance, where I practice, we have what's referred to commonly as felony murder. So if you are in the midst of committing a felony and someone is killed, those persons who were involved in that felony, maybe it initially started as a robbery, can be charged with second degree murder, which is life in prison without the possibility of parole in Pennsylvania. So here you have, someone who was involved in, making this horrific crime happen. They were an accessory to that crime, before it occurred. So they knew what was going to happen. You know, sometimes we hear accessory after the fact. That's when you aid somebody who's committed a crime. You didn't know about it, but now you're helping them get away. This is a much more serious charge in South Carolina.
And if you were her defense attorney, how would you go about defending her, considering she is facing something that could put her in prison, maybe for life, but if not that, especially since it seems like there's a pretty strong case against Devan Raper. There were witnesses. So if he goes down, you know, she's facing a very significant possibility of going to prison for a long time. How would you go about defending her?
Well, I think number one, you have to first understand and investigate what did she know about what was planned. Okay, now you know it's one thing to say, "Hey, I'm going to go and beat the crap out of this guy. Can you give me a ride?" You know, that's a crime too, because that would be an assault. You know, did she know he had a weapon? Did she think that there was a strong possibility he was going to use that weapon? You know, so how much do we know about specifically what Gianna knew, you know, prior to this incident? That is the whole case with regard to her. What was the buildup to this ride over to commit this horrific crime?
And then just lastly, just as we were talking about this, I thought of that. If somehow Devan Raper is found not guilty, and what we've been told from police that there's parts of this story that we don't know, he's found not guilty. How would a not guilty for his case impact the accessory case that Gianna Kistenmacher is dealing with?
Well, I think it would have an impact because number one, let's say, for instance, hypothetically, in a situation like this, it's a self-defense claim. I went there, I was worried, I had a gun, I was attacked, I was being beaten ferociously, and I feared imminent serious bodily injury or death, so I pulled out a gun and shot him to protect myself. Well, that would mean that you didn't go there with the intent of shooting him, that there wasn't a plan to use that gun in a violent manner even before you left there. So it'd be hard then to say that Gianna knew that there was going to be violence there when the person who allegedly performed the violent act didn't know he was going to do it, and he only did it in self-defense. So you know, it's a technical, almost a law school kind of question that you have to analyze and work your way through. But I think if he were found not guilty, it would have an impact on this case because she's related to it directly through Raper.
Yeah, it's a sad case. I mean, Trey Wright was young, he loses his life, and then you have these two other teenagers who are accused, and they very well could go to prison for a very long time. Matt Mangino, it's always great to have you on Law&Crime. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
To think of everything that played out on that dark country road, there is a GoFundMe for the family of Trey Wright. You can see it here on your screen. It has raised more than $6,000. Of course, there is no money that could ever bring him back or help with the pain of losing someone like a son, and from what we can see on social media, a person who is a friend to so many people. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.